everybody. Welcome back to Fourth and Goal with me, Joey.
And me, Robert Westerman.
Today we have a lot of hot topics to talk about. And Robert, I just want to get right into it. Free agency in the NFL. Oh my God. So many amazing moves.
It's been crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
real.
because the season obviously ended and then you have a little bit of a gap and then it's like, boom, all of a sudden you get 100 different moves and all these teams making all these big moves. I think like within the first 2 days, you see Saquon going to Philly and it's like just moves like that. And I feel like I followed free agency before for my teams, but I feel like this year I'm really following it pretty closely. And I just feel like there've been a lot of big moves and I think like there's a ton of implications for next year.
Right.
And a lot of very exciting moves too.
It's true. I mean, I think a lot about this free agency and I think about last year's free agency. And last year's free agency was already so good. And then now this year, I didn't think it could get better. Like, it's crazy. I remember last year going into the season, I was like, oh my God, like every NFL team is so equal, like in talent. Like who's going to win? It was so suspenseful. And now you have, I feel like, an even more like ramped up version of that free agency. Like, let's start with Chicago, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Oh my God. I give that trade. We're going to be giving grades on these trades today. I'm going to give them an A-, the Steelers, because, oh my God, they got Russell Wilson for nothing. Literally nothing.
They got him for nothing.
Well, $1 million or something.
That's crazy.
That's
crazy.
Insane.
Obviously Russ has not been the same the past few years. The latter part of his career in Seattle was not the greatest. And then obviously with Denver, he wasn't that great. But when you look at his numbers, his numbers were better in his second year in 2023 compared to his first year in Denver in 2022. So
we touched on that a bit last episode.
Yeah, we did.
About what went wrong. And,
And
I just think, again, we thought that Broncos let go of Wilson too fast. And you see now how much they paid him. They paid him nothing, but it's crazy how they also got Justin Fields for a 6th-round pick. That was kind of disrespectful. I think
Justin Fields is better than a
6th-round pick.
He showed some promise last year.
Yeah, he really did.
I think with Chicago, they're obviously not the greatest overall team, but I think on offense, considering who Fields had around him, I think, I don't think you can be too upset with how
especially
he did,
since
right?
It's Chicago,
right? Exactly. Chicago is always
horrible.
The forgotten team. But yeah, going back to Wilson, I think it's interesting. I guess, is it a toss-up to the lack of chemistry between him and Sean Payton? Because
I guess so.
They were brought in together, right, to kind of, build the next step for the Broncos,
and Payton kind of just got him out of there. I'm surprised.
So weird.
I'm surprised.
I just find it really strange. And that's going to go down as one of the worst
trades in NFL history.
history.
It's funny because everyone was trying to call the Deshaun Watson trade the worst trade in NFL history. Now you see Wilson released by the Broncos. They're still paying him that money. That's what a lot of Browns fans wanted too. They wanted Watson to be released, but everyone always had in the back of their mind they're never going to release him because of how much money they need to pay him. But a team actually did it, and they released Wilson. They're still paying him that money. It's crazy.
And then, I think with Fields, I think he's still an exciting talent.
Yeah,
I
agree.
He's an exciting talent, and I think how much of a career does Wilson have left in him? Who knows? Probably not that much, but he's on a 1-year deal for barely anything,
and apparently
he's going to be teaching. You got Justin Fields under him.
Justin Fields.
And Wilson's a great guy. He's a great quarterback. He's done incredible things. And if I were Justin Fields, I'd be ecstatic. Not to mention, I think Pittsburgh is a great football town. And, they made the playoffs last year.
They've made the playoffs almost every year.
With
Mike
Tomlin,
mediocre. Yeah.
With Mike Tomlin, he makes bad teams good teams.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. You saw what he did with Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett sucked in Pittsburgh, and he still found a way to have a winning season.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I think Tomlin's an excellent coach.
And going back to just Wilson and Fields, that the Steelers are planning to sign Wilson long-term after this season. So it's kind of strange to wonder what's going to happen in that quarterback room. That's going to be a huge watch for next season. They may have the plan to have just Wilson start and then have him train Fields and kind of develop Fields for the next generational talent of the Steelers, and then kind of just have him retire after a few years. But I don't know, kind of a Patriots situation there with how they're doing with Jacoby Brissett. They're going to draft their quarterback, obviously, have Jacoby Brissett be that veteran to teach him. I wonder if they're doing the same with the Steelers.
Yeah, I think so. It kind of just depends what Wilson's mentality is, right? Because
if he wants to be a starter, if he wants to be a long-term starter, when he wants to retire.
I think he's just kind of thinking about where his career is going because he's been in the league a fairly long time now. I think it's weird.
He's 35.
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like he is not that old, but he's getting fairly old.
Yeah.
And so I think he kind of just has to gauge what he can realistically do. And I think with the Steelers, I mean, obviously he's going to start, right? He's obviously going to start next year. That's like obvious. And then it kind of just depends how he does, I think, because if the first 5 games go great for the Steelers, then maybe they'll stick with him all year long. If he doesn't play well, then maybe play him a few more games, put Fields in. I think next year is going to be just a big evaluation year for Pittsburgh in the quarterback room.
Yeah. But that also is going to attract so many more free agents. I mean, they have Mike Williams going on a visit this week. I mean, that quarterback room is very attractive for wide receivers, for tight ends, for offensive pieces, I feel like now.
Yeah. I mean, they did trade Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
I can't remember who they traded him to, but they traded him away. I mean, I'm sure they'll pick up somebody else.
Yeah.
I always feel like Pittsburgh has at least like one, big name receiver. I mean, Mike Williams, I think, could fit that role nicely now that Johnson's gone.
Especially with all the cap space they'll have.
Right.
Like not
I mean,
and
they're paying.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what I think is the scariest part about Steelers, because they have 2 great quarterbacks. They're paying them like nothing. Mm-hmm. And they'll have so much more cap space to be able to fill in the rest of the pieces they need to make a deep playoff run. So I think they're going to be dangerous. They're a team to watch, and I give the trade an A-.
Yeah, I mean, I have a B, which I think is fairly harsh, but you have to remember that a B, like an A is perfect, right? An A is perfect. And I think for me, the reason I gave it a B is because I didn't like how Denver got rid of Wilson. And I think that just like gives me a bad vibe. I don't like that. I don't know, like, because obviously we don't really know what was going on with Wilson last year, obviously inside the practices. And I think the fact that they got rid of him, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of the Broncos like as a whole in their recent history with quarterbacks. But you don't know how he was doing in practice, if maybe because I feel like at Seattle he was such a leader.
Yeah.
And maybe in Denver he was not a leader because he was struggling so much.
I mean, I think the bigger problem in Denver was with his struggles, the team wasn't behind him. And honestly, that could come to the coach, Sean Payton. Was Sean Payton behind Wilson? Obviously not. And I'm surprised that the Broncos ownership allowed for Payton to kind of just do what he wanted and kind of just outs Wilson, because Wilson came before Payton. Wilson had that season before Payton.
Right.
And even though it was a horrible season, with Payton, he had a bounce back. He did.
He had a much better year.
He had 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. I mean, for God's sakes, why release him? It really has, I think it had to do with in the building conflicts with Payton and Wilson.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen that a lot recently, where the front office, the coaching has really become such a huge factor these days.
And do you think this is going to bite the Broncos in the ass?
Well, the fact that they have to keep paying him, I mean, I don't know. Like that's a big deal.
And plus, like, the biggest thing about that was bringing Payton in to help Wilson. Who's Payton going to help now?
Right, and they only did it for a year.
They
did 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year.
1 year,
and they chose Payton over Wilson. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's such little time that, and obviously with Payton, he was with Drew Brees for forever. I mean,
it's the same thing that you see with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady forever. Like, a lot of people put Belichick's success on Brady.
I mean, Mahomes has been with Andy Reid for forever. Like,
exactly.
Look at all these great quarterbacks.
Exactly. You have to look at these coaches without their quarterbacks.
Right.
I mean, Payton, if the argument is Payton is so good, then he should be able to be really good with Russell Wilson. And I think that the Broncos front office has their head up their ass because I think it's gonna bite them. I really do. I don't know what's gonna happen. But
I think so too. I mean, I think the thing about the Steelers now is that again they're in such a great division. We always talk about how
the AFC North
is so strong, and they just got a huge pickup with Derrick Henry.
Oh my god!
And I think that fills so many gaps. Now, were Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins bad? No, they weren't bad. But with where Henry is in his career, although I am a little disappointed that he didn't finish in Tennessee.
In Tennessee, yeah.
I think Tennessee loves him.
They do.
And, obviously, with Tennessee, Tennessee's definitely rebuilt. They were rebuilding. So, the timing, I think, was okay.
And that emotional goodbye that Henry had at the end of the season last year, he knew he was done.
Right.
He knew he was done with Tennessee. It was sad to see.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about that trade. Oh my God, I give it an A. I give it a flat A because
it's hard. There's so
hard
many
not to.
moves this year that it's hard not to give an A. I gave it a B plus just because I don't know how much Henry has left in him. It's kind of the same with Wilson. You don't know how much they have left in them. And obviously the thing with the Ravens is that they're going to be Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah.
The Steelers could it be? I don't see that, but I mean, the Ravens were obviously the 1 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if they were the 1 or the 2 seed next year, just because I feel like they're keeping most of their guys. I mean, they obviously picked up Henry. And
that's just already going to add to their overpowered running game.
Right.
I mean, maybe I also was thinking maybe Lamar Jackson can focus more on developing his quarterback and throwing skills rather than just trying to escape the pocket all the time running, because at least he'll have that dump option to Henry to be able to do that for him.
Well, and Henry's great at that. Henry's great at the out routes and doing little stop and goes in the middle of the field. I mean, he did that all the time with Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I think that creates a good dynamic. And obviously, Jackson should obviously be working on his passing game. I think obviously that's pretty crucial.
Yeah.
Which is, maybe that's the reason why the Ravens can't get so far in the playoffs.
I mean, we always go back on this idea of quarterback because you have to have your quarterback elite to be able to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like we talked about with Brock Purdy. Like he wasn't elite enough to win the Super Bowl. Is Lamar Jackson elite enough to win a Super Bowl?
I think so. So, but you have to prove it, right? You have to prove it, and they were the 1 seed in 2019 when they actually lost to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then they were the 1 seed last year, lost to Kansas City. I mean,
they always choke in the playoffs.
They do. They do.
Really
And when you have a team like that, it's hard to be like
so much
right?
talent.
Right.
It's so much talent.
Right.
It's crazy.
That's the issue.
They're unbeatable in the season, and then when it comes to where it really matters, they're
right. I mean, they go to San Francisco and absolutely annihilate the 49ers. And then they can't then again, I think it was fate that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But
they're going for that three-peat, man. Oh my God. Let's hope
I would,
not.
I don't even know what I would do.
Oh my God. Imagine Taylor Swift fans get their second year of being a fan. They have their team winning again.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
The fates are with they're with Kansas City, that's for sure. But there were a couple players that went into Tennessee, and those are Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard, kind of headlining those. I think Calvin Ridley is super exciting.
Yeah.
He obviously had the issue with he was out for a year because of the gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Jacksonville, was it injuries? I can't remember if he was hurt. I can't remember.
I think it was injuries.
So did he get fined for the gambling? Was it just a fine, or was it a game suspension?
He got suspended.
So he must have been hurt. He was hurt for a year then.
Yeah.
So he did sit out a year, and then I think he was back for most of last year. But now if you look at that Tennessee wide receiver room, D-Hop as the 2, Ridley as the 1, Treylon Burks, who was, I think we're yet to see his full potential because of some injuries that he's had. And then obviously some issues at quarterback. Tannehill was a huge issue last year. And then I think I feel like Levis and Fields are very similar to where they are because they showed potential, and next year is kind of their time. Although Wilson will get the starting spot. I think when Fields plays, that's his time to shine.
Right.
So I think that's very exciting for Tennessee. And then Treylon Burks was the 18th overall pick in the 2022 draft. And like I said, I think we're just waiting to see what his what his potential is. And I think if they can pick up a left tackle in this upcoming draft, I think it's either the guy from Notre Dame or the Penn State guy.
Right.
I mean, you can't do much better than pick up a left tackle. So I think Tennessee's in a good spot too.
Tennessee's on the way up, but I want to talk about another team that's on the way up that re-signed their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Wow. I give the signing an A- because
I gave it an A- too.
Yeah, because I mean they gave him $100 million, and
it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is a lot of money, but it's $10 million less than a lot of the other quarterbacks in the league are getting. I mean, we have this. You saw this industry standard set with Deshaun Watson and his quarterback contract, 230 guaranteed. Then you had Wilson have a similar one, and then so like in this current quarterback market, I feel like Baker Mayfield, the Bucs got a steal. I think they're paying him $10 million less than all the other guys a year, and he's honestly kind of done better than the other guys.
He had such an underrated year last year.
He really did,
and I think. Again, we always talk about the divisions. That division's very much looked over, and I think Tampa Bay's always looked over, even though they were, they made the playoffs. Obviously, ended up losing in the first round, but I think the Buccaneers are kind of always they're ever since Brady left. Because when Brady went there, I feel like they were always in the news, and since Brady left, they've been out of the news, and other teams have kind of taken their spotlight. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is obviously always in the spotlight, so I think like. Once Brady left Tampa Bay, I think that was kind of it. So, I think we should put the spotlight back on them. I mean,
I think so too. I mean, they did beat the NFC champions, the Eagles, in the first round. I mean, they did good. They have potential to do even better next year. So I put them on a list of dangerous teams to watch for, to be in the spotlight again. I give that an A- grade. Let's talk about Mac Jones to Jacksonville, though. Oh my gosh,
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones to Jacksonville. I give it a C. I give it a flat C.
Yeah.
I think that during his time with the Patriots, you saw his Pro Bowl year, which was honestly not too deserving of a Pro Bowl. It was whatever. But in his whole career in New England, he only passed for 8,900 yards with 46 touchdowns and 36 interceptions. That's steep. That is steep as hell, and I really don't think that he'll be the best backup for Lawrence. I mean, he's whatever. But what are the Jacksonville Jaguars going to do after this season with Mac Jones? You think they'll pick up his 5th year if he doesn't even play at all? Who even knows? I mean,
I think Trevor Lawrence is their guy. I actually gave this a grade of B because of two things. So number one, Mac Jones is from Jacksonville,
right?
Which, I mean, who knows how much that really plays into it,
right?
I mean, I doubt that much. I mean,
I'm sure comfortability.
Sure,
being
but
where he's from.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe the fan base that'll help with that a little bit. But I mean, honestly, how many people know where he went to high school? Not that many people, right? Then a lot of people know he went to Alabama. That's it.
Yeah.
So that's the extent of what they know. So I think that's the first thing as to why I gave it a B. And the second is that I think Mac Jones is a pretty good backup. I mean, that's just me. I don't know how useful he's going to be because, again, like I said, I think Trevor Lawrence is the guy.
Yeah.
And, I think if Jacksonville wants – I think a lot of people had them, being pretty close to contenders last year. And then they kind of just went downhill.
Yeah.
So I don't know what we can toss that up to, and I think it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens next year.
If Jones does show flashes of greatness, so let's say Lawrence gets knocked out for a couple
Jones
games.
showing flashes.
I don't know if I see him showing flashes necessarily either, but if he does, I feel like that could hopefully revive his career to be a starter next year. I mean, not next year, but like the next year after next year.
Right.
But I don't know where he's going to be going in the league. Honestly, he had a really bad season. 2-9 and 11 starts. Season. 2-9, and he had 10 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, and it's just not good enough. I mean, at least with Sam Howell, you had a 64% completion, 21 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. I mean, pretty bad, but at least you had some production there. You know what I mean? At least it was kind of similar. It reminded me of like Baker Mayfield's 2019 season because Sam Howell had like Ron Rivera under his belt, and now, I mean, let's see where his career goes. But like when you compare two guys who are basically backups now, I just don't see Mac Jones going anywhere after this year. I don't. If he doesn't have a potential to start in any games, like if Lawrence is not injured at all, I don't know. He might be out of the league.
Who knows?
Who knows?
It's like it's so up in the air.
Yeah,
because
it's true.
I feel like
He's
got to prove something.
Yeah,
he's got to prove something.
He really does.
But
will he have the opportunity to prove something? That's the bigger question. That's the only way he'll be able to save his career if he's given the opportunity.
Well, I don't think he's gonna. I mean, unless Lawrence gets hurt, right?
That's what I'm saying. If Lawrence gets hurt for a period of like, let's say 4+ games, and he is able to go in there and produce at a high level, career revived, at least to be able to be a backup the next year. But I don't see him being a backup the following year if he has no playing time. I just don't.
Yeah, I feel like for where he is in his career, I'm not sure if Jacksonville was the best landing spot for him.
It really, I don't think
right?
It was.
I mean, because I just feel like when you think of Jacksonville, you think of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's other teams where he could potentially
he could have revived his career exactly in other teams. You are right, and I don't know. This could be the end of him. This could be the killer.
Maybe, but then again, like, I mean, could it have been the only option he had? Because did teams like really want him? I mean,
yeah,
I'm not trying to hate too much, but I'm just being realistic.
Yeah,
I think, like we're saying though, I mean, if he's given the opportunity, I mean, he played at Alabama. I mean, under Nick Saban. I mean, like, I feel like anybody that does that has the potential. They have the potential.
He is an XFL quarterback.
Maybe we might see him. I don't even know a single name of any XFL team.
PJ Walker. He was the #1 pass thrower.
What are the names of the teams? What are the names
of the teams?
Yeah, I don't even know.
But following, changing topics to Saquon Barkley in Philly.
Huh.
I'm going to give a controversial one. I give it a B-. I give it a B-. I don't think that Barkley has proven that he has what it takes to be a top paid running back. Because they paid him
second highest running back contract in NFL history. I gave it a B. And so I'm kind of agreeing with you on this one.
Exactly. I mean, when I see top money paid, I expect top money results. So let's just compare Barkley's career to Nick Chubb.
Okay.
Right? So we have 1,200 attempts, 5,200 yards, 4.3 yard average, 35 touchdowns, 288 receptions for the #2 paid running back in the league. And then compared to Nick Chubb, who has a very similar contract, $1 million less. 1,200 attempts, 6,500 yards, 5.3 average, 48 touchdowns, 128 receptions. And so you see a full yard more averaging per game. That's top tier money. I don't think Barkley is top tier money. It just don't. I think they kind of overpaid him. And no doubt Barkley will help the Eagles run game, but I just don't think he's earning or like deserving of the money. And honestly, I think Josh Jacobs may have been a better pickup. I mean, obviously the Packers signed him, but like they should have gone for Josh Jacobs instead, I think.
Well, because they definitely would have gotten him for less money.
Exactly.
Right? They would have gotten him for less money. So I think you make a good point.
They're very similar in careers, Josh Jacobs and Barkley. I just think Barkley kind of has a lot of hype around him. I think he has.
There's a ton of hype.
Exactly.
A ton. And I think we have to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because he was out for that entire year. He got hurt in the second game of the year. He was out for that entire season.
In 2020, right?
Right, in 2020. Yep. Now, granted, that was like the COVID year. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of people kind of look past that year, but still missing an entire year, like that's not really very helpful for him. And I kind of have to agree with you with the contract. It's so much money. And I don't know how reliable he is. I just don't know how reliable he is. I feel like he's, like you said, a lot of hype. And, when you're in New York and New York hasn't really done anything, I feel like there hasn't been a lot to show.
It's true. I mean, you're right. I don't think he's had a lot to show for his career, especially being paid that much money. So I give it a B-. Hopefully they can do good with him, but we'll see. I want to kind of transition though the topic of discussion to the bottom 3 teams last year. What went wrong with these teams? What were your bottom 3?
So my bottom 3 were Arizona, New England, and Carolina. So I think Carolina's pretty clearly the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, what were your 3?
My 3 actually were the Commanders, Patriots, and Chargers. I thought specifically because of what happened in those buildings and just like how bad their seasons went, not only just statistically, but just like everything else that happened throughout the season. I mean, you had the Commanders with their horrible rebuilding phase. Like Sam Howell did terrible with Ron Rivera. I mean, obviously you're going to see the Commanders go on an upward shift this coming season. So a lot of their problems have been like rooted out. They fired their head coach. They got rid of their quarterback. They're getting a new head coach in there. They're getting a new quarterback they're going to draft. So I think
they also got Austin Eckler.
Exactly. I think they have a lot of promise. Austin
Eckler,
which is one of those free agency pickups we didn't mention, but really good one.
I think it's a solid one.
Yeah.
I think it's a solid one.
But Commanders, obviously I guess we don't really need to touch more on what went wrong there.
I mean, I feel like the issues are pretty irrelevant.
They've been rooted out. I mean, it seems to have a lot of promise for next year. So, Commanders, Chargers though. Chargers, oh my god. Horrible season for what was expected to be a really good one. I mean, I feel like every year we expect the Chargers to have a good season, and they just don't. And honestly, I feel like that a lot to blame for that was the head coach.
Yeah,
Staley.
Yeah, I think the head coach, and I think this might be, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think with Herbert, I feel like there's a lot of hype around him too, because
Really?
I feel like there's so much talk about the fact that, because obviously Herbert, Tua, Mac Jones, who was the other? Burrow. Was Burrow in their class?
Yeah.
Right. It was those 4. Those were the main 4, right?
Yeah.
No, wait. No, because
what?
I definitely have it wrong.
What do you mean?
Burrow, right?
Yeah.
Tua, but not Mac Jones. They both went to Alabama, so it can't.
Oh yeah, Mac Jones was the next year, right?
Right. He was the next year. Okay.
Next year
anyway,
with Fields and everybody.
The main three: Burrow, Tua, and Herbert. Right. And Herbert and Tua, I feel like, especially not so much last year, but the year before, were compared so much, and everybody was like, Herbert's way better, because Tua wasn't really doing that great.
Right.
And I think the Dolphins, I feel like Tua is holding them back a lot of the time. But I think with Herbert, I think it's kind of a similar situation to Saquon. There's so much hype, and like they just haven't done anything.
Not a lot to produce.
They haven't done anything,
I guess that's true, but at the same time, I feel like that's not much of a Justin Herbert problem. It was more of a schematic problem and more of a deeper problem because their O-line was horrible. Okay. That was a big thing for Chargers fans this past season. The O-line, they had no adjustments whatsoever throughout the entire season. They had some players in there playing left tackle the previous season, right tackle the other season, and then they had them go in different positions where they weren't the best. And that's where I feel like a lot of these problems came. That's why Herbert got injured. I mean, the line was never able to even comprehend any blitz coming to them. They weren't. They just, every single time the blitz would come, they would never protect Herbert. He got injured. I mean, that's why their season went so horrible. And not only the O-line, but just all the coaching mistakes throughout that season. I mean, you can blame Staley for a lot, but you also have to blame these coordinators and these specific coaches. Like the O-line coach should have been able to root out those problems himself. He should have been able to be like, okay, let's toy around. This guy's not doing good enough. This rookie may need a chance, right? They wouldn't sit guys when they weren't producing to be able to bring in their other talent and test things out. Because I feel like when your starters are doing bad, you need to be able to test other guys out no matter what, like in any position. So I guess that's why their season went bad. I mean,
well, the question for you is, bringing in Harbaugh the answer?
I think it definitely is for developing talent. I mean, being able to develop Herbert, I feel will be the most beneficial part of Harbaugh coming into the Chargers, being able to develop Herbert to be able to be where he wants to be. I mean, I guess with Harbaugh and Herbert now, we'll be able to actually see if Herbert's hype or if he's legit. So I guess Harbaugh is a part of the answer, but not the full answer. They need to be able to get that O-line fixed, and they need to be able to root out their other challenges to be able to be a good contender.
What about the thing about Harbaugh is that he's known as a defensive guy. So does that bring in fix the defense at all, or is it more about talent on the defense?
I think it could help their defense for sure. Like be able to bring in new schemes, be able to develop more talent in there because he is a college guy, and college guys are best at developing players. They are, and so I think that's where Staley is going to be able to do very good. The bigger question is who is Staley going to bring with him to be able to fill in those other positions? If they're good people, if they're good enough, then I think that's where you'll be able to see success.
Yeah, and then I think on the topic of coaching, I think one of the most interesting moves this offseason has been Mike Vrabel to the Browns. To your Browns.
To my Browns.
As a consultant, who knows what that means, but you go from being a big time head coach
for years.
Right, for years at Tennessee, where he honestly, he did a great job there. Yeah, he did. I think.
He did.
They had some very successful years, and obviously the 1 year they were the 1 seed and had a lot of momentum and hype around them. They obviously were let down by a first-round loss to Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think for Vrabel, like I kind of, you were touching on this before we started recording, the fact that like this is kind of maybe the start of a new era sort of coaching dynamic.
I think with this hire, it's too strange to just be ordinary. You know what I mean? Like a consultant, what does that even mean? So I think the Browns, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have something bigger in mind. I think they have a new concept that they're going to try to bring to the league. You don't hire Mike Vrabel, former head coach, top head coach for years, as just a consultant. That doesn't make sense. What I think is going to happen is they might start experimenting with kind of a duo head coach type of role. So I think what's going to happen next season is Vrabel and Stefanski will be side by side on those sidelines, being able to have two minds to think at a higher level, to be able to I feel like Stefanski can call a lot of plays on impulse. So I think bringing in Vrabel will be able to check him on some of those things. Like he likes to go for it a lot on fourth down. Stefanski does. So I think being able to bring in Vrabel to kind of be that second opinion.
I think Vrabel's a pretty aggressive guy, though.
Yeah.
Because I think with Tannehill as the quarterback, he took a lot of chances. And
he
always did a lot of trick plays.
True. But I guess I'm not really talking about that aggressiveness, like kind of checking Stefanski, more of kind of like having two minds work together to bring a better scheme in place.
Okay.
I guess. So like, I think that's what's going to happen. And that could bring a new era to coaching. If you see next season having success with Vrabel and Stefanski, if next season sees success with those two on the sideline, then teams are going to follow suit. Teams are not going to want to just sit there and see two coaches on the sideline. They're going to want to bring in two coaches themselves. That might bring a new era to the NFL.
I think you bring up an interesting kind of idea, a concept, but I think with a lot of head coaches that are fired, it's not necessarily, sometimes they really are bad and they're not meant for the NFL and they end up going to college and doing fine. But I think Vrabel he's such an NFL coach.
Yeah.
I just don't see him in college. And I think that's the one thing that we always see is the fact that when you have a really good college coach and you try and bring them to the NFL, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. So I think with the NFL and college football, you have to keep the two separated.
Yeah.
And I think he's suited for professional football. So I think the Browns obviously, that's a huge move. And I don't know. It just kind of depends what kind of influence he has. Like how much
power does he have?
Right. To what
are you
degree?
Going to see him on those sidelines with Stefanski, or are you going to kind of see him in the building? I think that's the biggest question.
And it could very well be that he's just in the building.
Yeah.
You know, that could very well
It
be.
could go either way, but I think if it goes the way that I see it going, I think we could see a new change in the league. I think we could see other teams following suit and wanting to have two minds work together to make greatness.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting take. That's all we got time for today on Fourth and Goal. My name is Robert Westerman.
I'm Joey Lavko. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next Monday.